Hey guys, how's it going? Kevin Cleary here with a knife video for you. And once again, you can see we're out in the forest. We're doing a requested video today, and it's a requested comparison between two pretty nice fixed blades, both of which I've been talking about lately on the channel and using quite a bit. This is the Lionsteel M4. Do I call this my favorite fixed blade? If it's not my favorite fixed blade, it's in like the top one or two of my very favorite fixed blades. I love the Lionsteel M4. This is the Fallkniven F1x. So unlike the typical F1, it's not in VG10. It's in a special steel. It's a little more hefty, a little bit different handle material and way of kind of putting this whole thing together. So, how do these two compare to one another? Let's go ahead and find out. First of all, let me say these are both similar size and weight, although they're not totally similar philosophies, okay? The F1X is absolutely built to be a tank of a knife for a survival situation, for maybe a military application. Like, it's meant to go to just be crazily overbuilt. The M4 is not quite the same. It's definitely very hefty and very overbuilt, very confidence inspiring. Just take a look at this blade stock on these. Okay, you can see just by that, you can see how much material the F1X carries out to the tip there. So you can kind of see the difference in approach just by comparing the blades. And so, while they're similar in size, they're a little bit different in philosophy. Now, can one do the jobs of the other and vice versa? Yeah, most of the time they can. And we'll talk about this as we get into some of the specifics here. But let's start off with size and weight. The M4 is 8 1/8 inches overall. It's going to have a 3 5/8 inch blade, 4 3/8 inches on the handle, 3 7/8, so just under 4 inches of grip area, and weigh in at 6 ounces or a little over 8 ounces with the sheath. Moving over to the F1X here, we've got 8 5/8 overall. So it's a little bit longer. Well, it's half an inch longer. 4-inch blade, 4 5/8 inches on the handle, 4 1/8 inches of grip area. Okay, now this guy is going to be 7.7 ounces and around 9 ounces with the sheath. The stock thickness on these two is also quite different. The F1X is considerably thicker than the Lionsteel. Okay, so those are going to be sort of the specs and how they break down. Clearly, the F1X is heavier and more stoutly built, I guess. And I feel like it's a little unfair to say, like, this is crazy overbuilt. This is an absolute tank of a knife, you know, and it almost reaches the point of sharpened pry bar. There's one simple little reason why it doesn't quite get there, and we'll talk about that right now since we want to talk about the blades. So the blade on the F1X is a laminate blade with a softer stainless steel for making up most of the blade, and then the edge being done in a cobalt steel that takes a very good edge and is quite hard. And my experience with it has been very, very good. The M4, on the other hand, is M390. There has been some discussion about how well it's heat treated and that kind of thing. Frankly, you know, I've used this a lot and it's held an edge extremely well. So that's all I'm going to say. Is it as hard as you can possibly get M390? I have no idea. I don't have a Rockwell testing machine and I'm not going to get one. But when I use this knife and cut stuff with it, I can tell you that it cuts for a really, really long time before I need to worry about it. And even when it does start to get a little bit dull, a quick touch on a strop or on a bit of a honing rod fixes it right up for me. So in terms of edge holding, I actually would say that the Lionsteel holds an edge just a little bit better. That's in my experience, and that's probably, there are a couple of factors to consider there, including the way these edges are made and their geometry, and so that's kind of coming into play a little bit here. Both work really, really well though, and I would not complain about the edge retention on either one. Sorry about the extra noise there. There's a ton of leaf cover, leaf litter, I guess I should say here. Let's do a little bit of a cutting comparison with these two. I got a stick that I think I can get a hold of. Yeah, and I haven't used this one yet. So when it comes to doing feather sticks, I have to tell you guys, well, I just talked about the fact that the Fallkniven here is really, really thick. It cuts like crazy. It's ridiculous how well this can do feather sticks and carving type work. And that's because of the convex edge that it has. So essentially, if you want to make a knife cut well that has fairly thick blade stock, the two best choices are going to be a hollow grind or a convex grind, okay? Hollow or convex. And both of them work pretty well. This has gone with a convex grind. Now, do I think they could do better here? Yes. If they took this convex grind and took it right up to the spine, leaving the same thickness here, but just thinning this whole thing out a little bit, I do think that would affect performance and it would be a little more versatile. Having said that, this is still a crazy thick blade stock and it's never going to be good for, I don't know, cutting up carrots or apples or potatoes, like any of those hard vegetables that can break. It's just not going to work for that. The Lionsteel will always do a better job of that. It's no slouch itself, fairly thick blade stock, fairly tough grind, okay? They've definitely tried to make this a little more hefty than, say your average fixed blade, heftier than, let's say, the B35 or some others that you might be familiar with. It's definitely ground to be tough and capable. When I try to do some feather sticking like we were doing with, hold on, I'm out of frame here. When I try to carve on a stick like this, like I was doing a minute ago, I can notice that it doesn't bite quite as easily. It bites well and it can definitely do the job. So I'm not complaining at all. And if I was going on a weekend hike or overnight with the M4, it's perfect. It would do the job absolutely, without a doubt. Does it bite in as nicely as the F1X? No, it doesn't. And that's just because that convex grind means that it's like zero behind the edge, which is fantastic. How do these two baton? Well, let me try to show you without knocking this whole thing over. In fact, what I may do, I've got a couple of, let's get these sheaths out of the way. We'll bring them back in when we're ready to talk about that. I do have a couple of pieces here that I'm going to baton down. I don't know if I can do it without destroying everything. Let me try and we'll see what happens. There's my baton. No, it's going to knock everything over. So let me just move out of frame for 1 second. Oh, okay, so here's the difference. I hit this 2 times. Maybe you heard it, maybe you didn't. And the thickness of this just pushes it apart. And it works really well. It bites early really good, but it just forces this apart so quickly. Moving over to the Lionsteel and a similar sized piece of the same tree. You can see there, I can pound it in a little bit deeper. By the time the F1X had reached this point, it was already splitting this apart. Because the Lionsteel's thinner, it doesn't quite do that so aggressively. See if I can finish here without causing any problems. So you can see I've got to do a little bit more work with the Lionsteel. Not a whole lot, okay? When you're in the process of doing that pounding, you probably feel a little more confidence with the F1X because it's just such a behemoth that you feel like you could pound on it with a sledgehammer and you're not going to hurt it. I wouldn't recommend anyone do that, but it certainly conveys that feeling. All right, so how do these two blades compare? Well, I hope you guys have got the point by now. The F1X, it initially cuts very well, but because it's so thick, it's going to be limited to sort of the kind of work we've just been doing. Outdoor carving stuff, batoning wood. You're not going to want to try to do food prep with this. You're not going to want to try to skin an animal with it. You're not going to want to try to do most EDC tasks with it unless it's fairly, insubstantial, like opening a package. Even cutting cardboard, you're going to notice the thickness of this versus the Lionsteel. Okay, so it's definitely ground and designed all around toughness, where the Lionsteel, well, it's certainly meant to be a tough knife. They have tried, with just the height of this grind and the thinness of the edge to make this a little more versatile. So if I was, going to take one knife for a weekend camping and I had these two blades to choose from, I'm leaning toward the Lionsteel because I can do food prep with it, I can do some carving with it, I can do the bushcrafting stuff if I need to, but I've got the versatility of using it in my kitchen and other places as well. Not that it's the best for that job, but it can at least do it. All right, so that's how those two blades stack up. What about the handles? Well, on the M4 here, we've got this thick, comfortable textured G10 crown spine. I guess I should have talked about crown spine versus 90-degree spine. That's one thing that the M4 is not going to do for you, is strike a ferro rod anywhere. The pommel is rounded, everything is rounded. The F1X, on the opposite end of the spectrum, everything is a sharp 90-degree spine corner, so it's going to definitely be more appropriate for doing fire starting type stuff. Back to what I was saying about the handle. Okay, very rounded, very thick, nicely contoured handle, still very grippy, absolutely comfortable, really, really good. Moving over here, it's not quite as thick, it's not quite as hand-filling, it's okay, and then you've got this thermo run plastic stuff, and it is extremely well textured. Now, having used this for a little bit, it's softened up a bit. I probably, for prolonged use, I'd want to wear gloves. It is very, very grippy. And the idea there is if you're wet, if you're sweaty, if it's muddy, you can still get the job done. And that there is something to be said for that. Now, let me add that I did field dress my deer with the M4. So if you field dressed a deer before, there can be quite a bit of blood, and I had no issues in terms of grippiness with it. So, well, it doesn't have quite as aggressive a texture as the F1X. It's still very, very capable. By the way, M390 for dressing out a deer is great because you don't need to stop halfway through and sharpen it. I've helped so many guys where you're taking this deer apart, and like every 15 minutes they stop and resharpen their knife, and I'm like, what are you doing? I mean, I get it, the knife goes dull, but just get a knife that has good steel and you won't have to worry about it. Moving on. That's a bit of a sidebar. That one will be free. So the handles, the M4 is a little more comfortable, but not quite as grippy as the F1X. All right, so that's essentially what I would say about that. Let's now talk about the sheaths. Get these guys out of the way. So we've got a fairly traditional handmade leather sheath on the M4. Very attractive, very useful, not quite as versatile as the plastic sheath on the F1X, okay? This sheath is definitely kind of interesting looking. It's going to hang a little bit lower, so that might be a thing. Now, for me, I like mine to ride up a little bit higher. I feel like it keeps it up out of the way, especially if I'm getting in and out of a car. If I'm using this as my EDC for the day, I definitely prefer something that rides higher. I tend to wear my knives sort of around at the back of my hip, so it's not in the way for bending over. This, riding a little bit lower, if you're one of those guys who likes more of a front carry, it's probably a little more suitable because riding a little bit lower means that it's not quite as much in your way when you bend over or when you're bending your leg. And if you got a bit of a belly like me, you're not sort of pinching your knife in there all the time. So that's definitely worth considering. The other point to make here is the versatility of this. So you could mount this on a backpack, on a chest rig if you're military or law enforcement. There's a lot of options for this sheath where those options don't all exist for the Lionsteel, at least in the stock sheath. You'd have to go aftermarket, which is fine, right? Lots of people like aftermarket sheaths, and you're not wrong to go after one, but you definitely change the value equation up quite a bit. And that's worth considering here. This guy can be had, I think, for around $140 to $150. This guy is going to be 200 and something. They're, say it's 205. I think I've seen them for around 200 bucks. That's pretty steep, considering there's not a substantial difference in materials or performance here over the 150 bucks for the M4. The Lionsteel really shines in the price department. When I take a look at this, the fit and finish, the sheath, everything is so good. And when I think of what say, well, certainly when I think of what the F1X is doing, there are a lot of really expensive fixed blades out there that do not do anything better than the M4. All right, Bark River would be another one to think about along those lines. So the Lionsteel is a little more versatile. By the way, this sheath locks, which is interesting. So you can lock this sheath down and now carry it upside down, or be a little more confident that you're not going to lose that knife. The snap does the same purpose, but not in quite as cool a way. All right, so let's finish this off. The M4 is definitely going to be better as a general use knife. If you want to EDC it, you could. Camping, yes. Can you take it in the bush? For sure. Can you use it in the kitchen? A little bit. It's not ideal for that, but it can probably get the job done. Where the F1X is, because it's so designed to be tough and incredibly overbuilt, it limits its versatility. So do I want this in the kitchen? No, right? This is primarily going to be a survival bushcraft style option and not be great at some of the other things we might want to use our knife for. So that's how I would compare these two. You know, when you think about if you think about which one I would keep, if someone said you have to give one away or get rid of one, you can only keep one or the other. Yeah, I'm definitely keeping the Lionsteel because of the extra versatility it offers. And of course, if you're buying one of these, you know, if you need something that's an absolute tank, if you already have a really good sort of utility cutting tool, then there's a great role for this. And of course, it's going to be a premium price tag. Maybe you can look on the secondary market or something of that nature, and that might be a good option for you. Anyway, thanks a lot for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I will send you over to DLT trading for these. This style of knife, the higher end fixed blades, DLT does a great job of. And so I'm going to drop that link down in the description box, and using that link does help the channel. Thanks in advance. We'll talk to you soon.